The cargo ship drifted silently through the cold darkness of space. It was a small vessel, old and worn, with rust marks on its hull and an engine that made strange noises when it ran too long. The ship's name was painted on the side in faded white letters. Lucky Penny. It was not a lucky ship. Not today. Henry Cole sat alone in the pilot's chair, his wrinkled hands resting on the controls. He was 73 years old, with thin gray hair and a face full of deep lines that told stories of a long life. His eyes were pale blue, the color of winter sky, and they watched the stars through the dirty viewport with a kind of tired peace. He had been traveling for 6 days now, heading to a small colony world where his daughter lived with her family. His granddaughter was turning 7 years old, and Henry had promised to be there. He had a gift wrapped in brown paper sitting in the cargo hold, a wooden music box that played an old Earth song his own mother used to sing. The ship's computer beeped suddenly. Henry looked at the screen and felt his stomach drop. 3 vessels had appeared on the sensors. They were big, much bigger than his little cargo ship, and they were moving fast. Their shapes were strange and sharp, like insects made of black metal. Henry had never seen ships like these before, but he had heard stories. Every human who traveled the outer systems had heard the stories. The VELT. They were a species that had been conquering worlds for longer than humanity had been among the stars. They came from somewhere in the deep galaxy, and they took whatever they wanted. Planets, resources, people. The United Earth government had been watching them carefully for years, hoping they would stay far away from human space. That hope died as Henry watched the 3 ships surround his vessel. A voice crackled through his communication system. It was harsh and clicking, like stones being scraped together, but some kind of translator turned it into words he could understand. Human vessel. You will shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. If you resist, you will be destroyed. Henry sat very still for a long moment. He thought about his daughter waiting for him. He thought about his granddaughter and the music box in the cargo hold. He thought about trying to run, but his old ship could never outrun those. Sleek black vessels. He reached out and shut down the engine. The largest Veltri ship moved close and attached itself to the Lucky Penny, with a loud clang that echoed through the hull. Henry heard footsteps, many footsteps, heavy and fast coming through the airlock. He did not stand up. He did not reach for the old pistol he kept under the console. He just waited. The door to the cockpit burst open, and Henry got his first look at the Veltri. They were tall, maybe 8 feet, with bodies covered in hard black plates like armor. They had too many limbs, 4 arms and 2 legs, and their heads were triangular with large dark eyes that reflected no light. Their mouths were full of small sharp teeth, and they made clicking sounds as they moved. 4 of them rushed into the cockpit and pointed weapons at Henry. He raised his hands slowly, feeling the ache in his shoulders as he did. "I surrender," he said calmly. "No need for shooting." The soldiers seemed confused. They looked at each other, their dark eyes blinking. One of them stepped forward and grabbed Henry by the arm, pulling him roughly out of the chair. Henry stumbled but did not fall. His old bones hurt, but he had felt worse pain in his life. They dragged him through the airlock and into their ship. The inside was dark and cold, with walls made of the same black material as their armor. Everything smelled strange, like metal and something sour. Henry kept his eyes open and watched everything as they pulled him through long hallways. Finally, they brought him to a large room where a single Veltri waited. This one was bigger than the others, with golden marks painted on his armor and a presence that demanded attention. Henry guessed this was their leader. The commander studied Henry with those empty dark eyes. His translator device hummed as he spoke. "You are old," the commander said. "Weak. Why do humans send their elderly to travel alone in dangerous space?" Henry almost smiled. I'm retired. I was just visiting family. Retired from what? The Navy. Long time ago. The commander's head tilted slightly. You were a warrior? I was a logistics officer. I moved supplies around. Made sure the ships had food and fuel. Not very exciting. The commander made a sound that might have been disappointment. Then you have no value for information. You are useless. Probably, Henry agreed. Two soldiers grabbed him again and pulled him out of the room. They took him down more hallways, deeper into the ship, until they reached a row of cells with heavy doors. They threw him inside one, and the door slammed shut behind him with a sound like a thunderclap. Henry sat down on the cold, metal floor and leaned his back against the wall. His body ached everywhere. The cell was small and empty, with no bed, no toilet, nothing but bare walls and a dim light in the ceiling. He thought about his family. His daughter would be worried when he did not arrive. She would contact the authorities, and they would start looking for him. But space was big, impossibly big, and he was just one old man on one small ship. The chances of anyone finding him were very small. Henry closed his eyes and let out a long breath. He was not afraid. That surprised him a little. He had always thought he would be afraid of dying, but sitting here in this cold alien cell, he felt mostly tired. Tired and sad that he would not see his granddaughter's face when she opened the music box. But underneath the tiredness, underneath the sadness, there was something else. A small, hard feeling in his chest that he recognized from long ago. It was the feeling he had when he was young, when he wore a uniform and served on warships that carried weapons capable of cracking moons. The Veltari thought he was weak. They thought humans were weak. They had looked at him and seen only an old man with gray hair and aching joints. They had not seen what was behind his pale, blue eyes. Henry Cole had been born on Earth, in a small town that no longer existed because a war had burned it to ashes when he was 3 years old. He had grown up in refugee camps, eating recycled food and sleeping in rooms crowded with strangers. He had joined the Navy at 18 because it was the only way to escape poverty. He had served for 35 years, and in that time, he had seen things that would break most minds. He had watched human ships ram themselves into enemy carriers, their crews singing old songs as they died. He had seen soldiers hold defensive lines with nothing but knives after their ammunition ran out. He had been there when the fleet cracked the Kreth homeworld's defenses in 6 hours because the Kreth had made the mistake of killing human civilians. The Veltari did not know any of this. They saw a young species, barely 300 years in space, and they assumed humans were soft and easy to conquer. Henry opened his eyes and looked at the cell door. They would learn. One way or another, they would learn. 3 days passed in the cold cell. Henry Cole measured time by the meals they brought him, small portions of something gray and tasteless that he forced himself to eat. His body needed fuel, even if the fuel was terrible. A soldier who did not eat was a soldier who could not fight, and somewhere deep inside himself, Henry was still a soldier. He spent the hours thinking. He thought about his past, about all the years he had served, about the friends he had lost and the battles he had survived. He thought about his daughter and wondered if she was looking at the stars right now, hoping her father was still alive somewhere among them. On the 3rd day, the cell door opened. The commander walked in. His golden markings gleamed in the dim light, and his dark eyes studied Henry like a scientist studying an insect under glass. 2 guards stood behind him, their weapons ready. "I am Commander Crickstal," the Veltari said. His translator made his voice sound flat and mechanical, but there was something proud in the way he stood. "I lead this fleet. I have conquered 11 worlds. I have never lost a battle." Henry looked up from where he sat on the floor. His joints screamed in protest, but he did not try to stand. "Good for you." Crickstal's head tilted. "You do not show fear." Every other species we have captured shows fear. They beg, they cry, they offer us anything to spare their lives. But you sit there like you were waiting for a transport shuttle. I'm too old to be scared, Henry said. Fear takes energy. I'd rather save my energy for other things. The commander made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. Perhaps you were simply too stupid to understand your situation. Let me explain it clearly. You are going to die here. The only question is whether you die quickly or slowly. If you give us information about Earth's defenses, your fleet positions, your weapons, we will kill you fast. If you refuse, we will take the information from your mind, piece by piece, and you will scream for days before the end. Henry was quiet for a moment. Then he shook his head slowly. Son, I've been retired for 15 years. I don't know current fleet positions. I don't know what weapons we have now. Technology changes fast, and I've been out of the game for a long time. I'm just an old man who was trying to visit his granddaughter. Then you are truly useless, Crystal said. Maybe, but let me tell you something anyway. Since we're talking. Henry shifted his weight, trying to find a position that did not make his back hurt so much. You've made a mistake here. A real bad one. And I don't think you understand that yet. The commander's mandibles clicked together. We have conquered species that control 100 worlds. Your kind holds perhaps 30. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Your military is small and scattered. You are not a threat to the Velthari Dominion. That's what everyone says, Henry replied. Right before things go wrong for them. Crystal stepped closer, looming over the old man like a shadow. Explain yourself, human. What mistake do you think we have made? Henry met those dark alien eyes without flinching. You took one of us. That's the mistake. You probably thought it didn't matter. Just one old human on a worthless ship. But that's because you've been watching us from far away. You've seen our numbers and our technology and decided we were easy prey. You didn't do your homework. You don't understand what we are. And what are you? The commander's voice carried a hint of genuine curiosity now. Henry smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a man who had walked through fire and come out the other side still burning. We're the species that invented the concept of total war before we even figured out how to leave our own planet. We killed 60 million of our own kind in a single conflict, not for resources, not for territory, but for ideas. And when that war ended, we didn't rest. We built rockets and flew to our moon. We split the atom and used it to vaporize cities. Every single time we faced extinction, we've come out meaner and smarter than we were before. He paused, letting the words hang in the cold air. My grandfather fought in the Third Pacific War. My father served during the Martian insurrection. I was at the Battle of Proxima when the Kreth thought they could burn our colony and we would just give up. Henry's voice dropped lower, harder. You know what we did? We didn't have enough warships to match their fleet, so we loaded civilian freighters with nuclear weapons and rammed them into Kreth carriers. Volunteers, Commander. Every single one of them stepped forward and said, I'll do it. They flew those ships knowing they were going to die. And they did it anyway. Crystal was silent. His translator hummed softly, processing concepts that did not fit neatly into Velthari understanding. You don't fight wars for survival, Henry continued. You fight them for conquest, for power, for resources. You calculate costs and benefits, acceptable losses, and strategic gains. That's logical. That's smart. But humans don't work that way. When you push us, we don't calculate. We just push back. And we don't stop pushing until the threat is gone. You're trying to frighten me with stories, the commander said. But his voice had lost some of its confidence. I'm trying to save your people, Henry replied softly. Because right now, somewhere out there, The United Earth Navy is learning that one of their citizens has been taken by a hostile force. And there are protocols for that, Commander. Old protocols, written in blood and fire. Once those protocols activate, there's no stopping what comes next. Crickstall's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. We are not afraid of your navy. Our ships are superior. Our weapons are stronger. Maybe, probably, even. You'd win a straight fight, I guess. Henry nodded slowly. But that's the thing about humans. We don't fight straight fights. We fight dirty. We fight desperate. We fight like every battle is our last, because we remember what it was like when every battle really was our last. We have 10,000 years of warfare in our blood, and we've gotten very, very good at it. He leaned back against the wall, his old body suddenly very tired. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to report to your superiors that you've captured a human. They're going to laugh and say it doesn't matter. And then, in a few days or weeks, you're going to see something on your sensors that makes your blood run cold. And when that moment comes, I want you to remember this conversation. I want you to remember that I warned you. Commander Crickstall stared at the old man for a long time. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the cell. The door slammed shut behind him. In the darkness, Henry Cole closed his eyes and waited. He had planted a seed. Whether it grew or not was out of his hands now. The universe would decide what happened next. But he had spoken the truth, and the truth had power. The Valkyrie were strong, but they were also proud. Pride made people blind. Pride made them underestimate their enemies. And underestimating humanity had always been a fatal mistake. Henry thought about the young officers he had trained decades ago. He thought about the fierce determination in their eyes, the willingness to sacrifice everything for their shipmates. He thought about the old saying that every human soldier knew by heart, "Leave no one behind." It was more than a saying. It was a promise, a covenant, a fundamental truth that ran deeper than logic or strategy. The Valkyrie did not understand that yet, but they would. Commander Crickstall could not sleep. He lay in his quarters aboard the flagship, staring at the dark ceiling, thinking about the old human in the cell below. The words kept repeating in his mind like an echo that would not fade. 60 million dead in a single war. Volunteers flying into certain death. 10,000 years of warfare. It was nonsense. It had to be nonsense. The Valkyrie had studied human space from a distance for decades. They had analyzed the species carefully before deciding to expand in their direction. The humans were young, barely 3 centuries into interstellar travel. They were spread thin across a few dozen colony worlds. Their military was small compared to the great powers of the galaxy. And yet something about the old man's certainty bothered Crickstall. He had interrogated many prisoners over the years, soldiers, politicians, scientists from a dozen different species. He knew what fear looked like. He knew what desperation looked like. He knew the difference between genuine confidence and false bravery. The human had not been pretending. On the 4th day of the voyage, Crickstall found himself walking back to the cell. He told himself he was going to extract more information. He told himself the human might reveal something useful about Earth's weaknesses. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was curious. He needed to understand. The cell door opened, and the old man looked up. He seemed smaller than before, more tired, but his pale eyes were still sharp. "Back again?" Henry Cole said. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten about me." Crickstall dismissed the guards with a gesture. The door closed, leaving them alone. The commander stood in the center of the small cell, his forearms folded across his chest. "Tell me more," he said. "About your species. About these wars you speak of." Henry raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "I thought I was useless. Perhaps I wish to know my enemy better. The old man was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly and shifted into a more comfortable position against the wall. All right, I'll give you a history lesson. Free of charge. He rubbed his tired eyes with the back of his hand. Let's start at the beginning. Humans evolved on a planet called Earth. Nice world, mostly water, good weather in most places. But it was also a dangerous world. We had predators that could kill us easily. We had diseases that wiped out millions. We had natural disasters, storms, earthquakes, floods that destroyed everything we built. Many species face such challenges, Crick still said. It does not make them special. True, but here's what made us different. We didn't just survive those challenges. We got angry at them. We took it personally when nature tried to kill us. And we decided, somewhere deep in our primitive brains, that we would not just endure. We would fight back. We would conquer. Henry's voice grew stronger as he spoke, as if the memories were giving him energy. We killed the predators. We built walls against the storms. We developed medicine to fight the diseases. And when we ran out of natural enemies, we turned on each other. Because that's the truth about humans, Commander. We're built for conflict. It's in our blood, our bones, our very souls. Peace is something we have to work at. War comes naturally. Crickstell's mandibles clicked softly. You speak of this as if it is something to be proud of. I'm not proud of it. I'm just honest about it. Henry shrugged. The first cities humans built, we surrounded with walls to keep other humans out. The first tools we invented, we immediately figured out how to use as weapons. Every major advancement in our technology metalworking, chemistry, physics, nuclear energy, space travel came from military research. We went to the stars not because we were curious, but because we were scared. Scared that if we stayed on one planet, something would eventually destroy us. And yet you claim to want peace. We do want peace. Most of us anyway. But we've learned that peace only comes to those who are strong enough to defend it. Henry's eyes met Crickstell's. That's the thing your people don't understand. You see a young species with a small military, and you think we're weak. But our military is small because we haven't needed it to be big. We've been at peace for almost a century now. The last major war we fought ended before I was born. He leaned forward slightly. But the knowledge is still there. The training, the infrastructure, the willingness to fight. Humans don't forget how to make war just because we're not actively waging it. We teach our children about the old conflicts. We keep the weapons ready. We remember, Commander, because we know that peace never lasts forever. Crickstell was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter than before. The Velthari have conquered 17 star systems. We have defeated species with technologies far beyond your own. What makes you think humans would be any different? Henry smiled sadly. Because you fight to win. We fight to survive. There's a difference. Explain. When you attack a world, you want to take it intact. You want the resources, the infrastructure, the population as workers or slaves. You calculate acceptable losses because you're trying to gain something from the conflict. Henry shook his head slowly. Humans don't think that way. When we fight for survival, we don't care about acceptable losses. We don't care about keeping things intact. We burn everything. We destroy everything. We make victory so costly for our enemies that they decide we're not worth the trouble. He paused, gathering his thoughts. There's a concept in our history called scorched earth. When an enemy army invaded your territory, you burned your own crops. You poisoned your own wells. You destroyed your own cities. You left nothing for the invaders to take, nothing for them to use. It was insane by any logical standard. But it worked, Commander. It worked because it told the enemy something important. We would rather destroy ourselves than let you have what's ours. Krikstal's dark eyes blinked slowly. That is, wasteful. That's the point. War isn't supposed to be efficient for humans. It's supposed to be terrible. So terrible that no one wants to start one. Henry's voice dropped lower. But when someone does start one with us, we make sure they regret it. We make sure the cost is so high that no one else ever tries it again. The cell fell silent. The hum of the ship's engines was the only sound. You have given me much to think about, Krikstal said finally. I hope so. Henry settled back against the wall, his brief burst of energy fading. I wasn't lying when I said I wanted to save your people. You seem like a reasonable commander, smart, careful. But you've started something here that you can't control. Taking me was like kicking a hornet's nest. The hornets are coming, Commander, and they don't care how big you are or how strong your armor is. They just want to sting. Krikstal turned toward the door, then paused. If what you say is true, why warn me? Why not simply wait for your people to come and destroy us? Henry was quiet for a moment. When he answered, his voice was soft and tired. Because I'm old. I've seen enough death for one lifetime. I've seen good people die on both sides of conflicts that could have been avoided. And I've learned that the best victory is the one where nobody has to fight at all. He met the commander's eyes one last time. You can still end this peacefully. Release me. Withdraw from human space. Tell your leaders that we're not worth the trouble. That's the smart move. That's the move that keeps your soldiers alive and your fleet intact. And if we don't? Henry closed his eyes. Then you'll find out exactly what humans are capable of. And I promise you, Commander, you won't like the answer. The news of the captured human reached Valkyrie High Command 3 days. Later, the response was exactly what Krikstal expected. Laughter, dismissal, mockery. Duh. Admirals and generals who led the dominions. Great War Machine found the whole situation amusing. One old human on a broken cargo ship? This was the species they were supposed to fear? Use him for propaganda, Admiral Vrexenol ordered through the communication link. His image flickered on the screen, his golden armor gleaming with the marks of 100 victories. Broadcast his execution. Show the humans what happens when they cross into our territory. It will make future conquests easier. Krikstal hesitated. Admiral, the prisoner has made certain claims about human military capability. Perhaps we should investigate before. Claims? Vrexenol's mandibles clicked with contempt. An old man tells you stories, and you believe them? I expected better from you, Commander. The humans are insects. They will be crushed like all the others. The communication ended. Krikstal sat alone on the bridge, staring at the blank screen. He had tried. He had reported the prisoner's warnings, had suggested caution, had asked for more intelligence about human military doctrine. His superiors had ignored every word. They were too confident, too proud, too certain of their own superiority. And perhaps they were right. Perhaps the old human was simply a good storyteller, spinning tales to frighten his captors. It would not be the first time a prisoner had tried such tactics, but something in Krikstal's gut told him otherwise. That evening, he went to the cell one more time. Henry Cole looked worse than before. His skin had turned a grayish color, and his breathing was shallow. The poor food and cold conditions were taking their toll on his aged body. I have orders to execute you, Krikstal said flatly. They want to broadcast it to human space as a warning. Henry nodded slowly, as if he had expected this. I figured something like that would happen. However, the commander paused. I have convinced my superiors to allow you to send a message first. They believe you will beg for mercy, and that this will demoralize your people. The old man's pale eyes sharpened. You want me to send a message? I want you to tell your people to surrender, to accept Valkyrie dominance peacefully. If you do this, perhaps more lives can be saved." Henry was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his weathered face. It was not a smile of joy or relief. It was something else entirely, something that made Crickstill deeply uncomfortable. "I'll send a message," Henry said, "but it won't be the one you're expecting." They brought him to the communication center, a large room filled with screens and control panels. Valkyrie technicians monitored everything, ready to broadcast the message across multiple frequencies. They aimed a recording device at Henry as he sat down in a chair, his whole body barely fitting the alien furniture. "Whenever you're ready," Crickstall said. Henry looked at the camera. He took a deep breath, straightened his spine as much as his aching back would allow, and began to speak. "This message is for Admiral Patricia Hayes at United Earth Naval Command." His voice was calm and clear, stronger than it had been in days. "Pat, it's Henry Cole. We served together on the Dauntless 40 years ago. I know you're getting this. I know what protocols kick in when a human citizen is taken by a hostile power." He paused, letting the words sink in. "So this is me asking you just this once to wait." The Valkyrie technicians exchanged confused glances. This was not what they had expected. These folks here, the Valkyrie, they don't understand what they've started. They think because we're young and spread thin that we're soft. They think a show of force will make us kneel. Henry shook his head slowly. "But they've got families on these ships, Pat. They've got children. They're not monsters. They're just people who made a mistake. A big mistake, but a mistake all the same." His voice softened. "I'm asking for 48 hours. That's all. Let me try to explain things to them. Let me give them a chance to return me and withdraw from human space peacefully. Maybe we can avoid what's coming. Maybe we don't have to add another war to our history books." Then his expression changed. The softness disappeared, replaced by something hard and cold. Something that Crickstall recognized from his own reflection in the mirror. The face of a warrior. "But if I don't walk out of here in 2 days, you know what to do. You tell the boys and girls in the fleet that Henry Cole says hello. You tell them I'm proud of them. And you remind them what we do to people who take our own." He leaned forward, his pale eyes burning into the camera. "We don't leave anyone behind. We never have. We never will. Not one single soul, as long as the human race survives. That's not a policy. That's not a strategy. That's who we are, down to the bone. And if these folks think that an old man with bad knees isn't worth fighting for, they're about to learn exactly how wrong they are." Henry sat back, the fire in his eyes dimming to embers. 48 hours, Pat. That's all I'm asking. After that, do what you have to do. Call out. The recording ended. The room was silent. Crickstill stared at the old man, trying to process what he had just witnessed. The message was not a surrender. It was not a plea for mercy. It was a threat wrapped in politeness, disguised as a request for peace, but unmistakably a threat. "Send it," he ordered the technicians. "Broadcast it on all frequencies." They obeyed. The message went out into the void, traveling at the speed of light, spreading across the stars like ripples in a pond. 23 hours later, everything changed. Crickstill was on the bridge when the sensor officer made a sound he had never heard before, a high-pitched chirp of pure terror. "Commander." Multiple contacts, dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. The main screen activated, showing a tactical display of the surrounding space. Red dots were appearing, one after another, in a cluster that grew larger with every passing second. 10 ships, 20, 50, 100. The number kept climbing. "How many?" Crickstill demanded, his voice barely steady. The sensor officer's limbs were shaking. 400. 417 vessels, Commander. Human signatures. They're all human. 417 ships. The Valkyrie fleet had only 32. Crystal looked at the display, at the impossible swarm of human vessels surrounding his position, and he understood. The old man had not been telling stories. He had been telling the truth. The humans had come for one of their own, and they had brought everyone. He turned to the guards standing by the door. "Bring the prisoner to the bridge," he said quietly. Now, as the guards rushed to obey, Crixtel stared at the sea of red dots on the screen and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Fear, not fear of death. He was a warrior. Death held no terror for him, but fear of something worse. Fear that he had made a mistake that could not be undone. Fear that his pride and his certainty had led his people into a trap from which there was no escape. The old human had warned him. He had practically begged Crixtel to listen, to understand, to make peace before it was too late. And Crixtel had not listened. Now the Hornets were here, and they were very, very angry. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion was chaos. Officers shouted at each other. Alarms screamed. The tactical display showed the impossible truth. 417 human vessels had formed a wall of steel and fire between the Valkyrie fleet and open space. There was no escape. There was no retreat. They were surrounded. Commander Crixtel stood in the center of it all, forcing himself to remain calm. Panic would not help. Fear would not help. He needed to think. The human fleet was a strange sight on the sensors. It was not a proper military formation. There were sleek warships with heavy weapons. Yes, destroyers and cruisers with enough firepower to crack planets. But there were also converted cargo haulers with guns welded to their hulls. Mining vessels with their industrial lasers pointed forward. Even civilian yachts that had been armored with whatever materials the owners could find. It was an army of volunteers. An army of ordinary people who had dropped everything and flown across the stars because one old man had been taken prisoner. The guards brought Henry Cole to the bridge. He looked terrible thin, pale, barely able to stand. But his eyes were bright as he took in the scene around him. The panicking officers, the flashing alarms, the sea of red dots on the tactical display. "Well," he said quietly, "I guess Pat didn't wait the full 48 hours. Crixtel turned to face him. "Call them off." "I can't do that. I'm not in command of those ships." "Then tell them to stand down. Tell them we'll negotiate." Henry shook his head slowly. "That's not how this works, Commander. I warned you. I told you what would happen. You didn't listen." A communication signal flashed on the main console. The operator looked at Crixtel with wide, frightened eyes. "They're hailing us, Commander. Put it through." The screen flickered, and a human face appeared. She was a woman in her 60s, with gray streaks in her dark hair and a face as hard as stone. She wore a naval uniform covered in medals and insignia that Crixtel did not recognize but understood instinctively. This was a leader, a warrior, someone who had earned her position through blood and fire. "This is Admiral Patricia Hayes of the United Earth Navy," she said. Her voice was cold and steady, like a blade pressed against a throat. "You are holding one of our citizens. You have 1 hour to return him unharmed. If he has been mistreated, you have 30 minutes. If he is dead, you have no time at all." Crixtel stepped forward. "Admiral, I am Commander Crixtel of the Valkyrie Dominion. Your single ship is impressive, but surely you understand the realities of this situation. We have superior technology. Our weapons are more powerful. If you attack, we would destroy at least half of your fleet before." "Half?" Hayes interrupted. Her eyes narrowed. "You think you destroy half my fleet? You're probably right. Maybe more than half. Your ships are better than ours. Your weapons hit harder. In a straight fight, you'd win. She leaned forward, and something terrifying flickered in her gaze. But here's what you need to understand about humans, Commander. We don't do math the way you do. We don't calculate acceptable losses. Every single ship in this fleet volunteered to be here. Every single crew member knows they might not go home today. They came anyway. Crickstel felt his heart beating faster. Why? Why risk so much for one man? Because Henry Cole is one of us. Hayes' voice did not waver. And we don't leave our people behind. Not ever. Not for any reason. If you kill him, we will destroy your fleet. If you kill us, more will come. If you kill them, even more will follow. You can't win this, Commander. Not by fighting. The only way you survive today is by giving us back our own. The bridge fell silent. Every Valkyrie officer was staring at the screen. At the human admiral with her cold eyes and steady voice. Crickstel looked at Henry Cole. The old man stood quietly by the door, watching everything with an expression that was almost sad. You could have destroyed us without warning, Crickstel said slowly. You could have attacked while we were unprepared. Why send a message first? Why give us a chance? Henry answered before the admiral could. Because that's who we are too. We're capable of terrible things, Commander. We've done terrible things throughout our history. But we try to be better. We try to give our enemies a chance to walk away. He paused, his pale eyes meeting Crickstel's dark ones. We're giving you that chance now. Take it. The silence stretched on. Crickstel looked at the tactical display, at the overwhelming human force, at his own small fleet trapped in the center, at the impossible situation he had created through pride and arrogance. He thought about his crew, about the families aboard the ships under his command, about the children he had mentioned to justify his conquests, and he thought about what the old human had said days ago in that cold cell. The best victory is the one where nobody has to fight at all. Stand down, Crickstel ordered. His officers stared at him in shock. Sir? The tactical officer asked. Lower our weapons. Deactivate our shields. Prepare a shuttle to transport the prisoner to the human fleet. Crickstel's voice was steady, though his hearts were heavy. We are releasing him. The bridge erupted in protest. Officers shouted about honor, about the Dominion's reputation, about what High Command would say. Crickstel silenced them with a look. High Command is not here, he said quietly. I am, and I will not sacrifice my crews for pride. Not when there is another way. An hour later, Henry Cole walked slowly across the shuttle bay. He paused at the airlock and turned to look at Commander Crickstel one last time. Thank you, Henry said simply. Crickstel's mandibles clicked in what might have been a sad laugh. You warned me. I should have listened sooner. You listened eventually. That's what matters. Henry reached out and placed a wrinkled hand on the commander's armored shoulder, a gesture that surprised them both. Tell your leaders what you saw today. Tell them that humans don't want war. We've had enough war for 1,000 lifetimes. But if someone forces us to fight, we will fight until there's nothing left. Make them understand that. I will try. That's all anyone can do. Henry smiled, a real smile this time, warm and tired. Take care of your people, Commander. Get them home safe. He stepped through the airlock. The shuttle door closed behind him. Crickstel watched the small vessel fly across the void toward the human fleet. He watched as it landed safely in one of the carrier bays. He watched as the human ships, one by one, turned and began to leave the system. They did not fire a single shot. Admiral Hayes sent one final message before the last human ship disappeared into faster-than-light travel. We're not your enemies, Commander. But we could be. Remember that. Then they were gone. The stars were empty again. Crickstel stood alone on the bridge, surrounded by his silent crew, and made a decision that would change the course of his civilization's history. He would go home. He would stand before the high command and tell them everything. He would explain that humans were not prey. They were not insects to be crushed. They were something else entirely, something ancient and fierce and utterly united in ways the Velfari could not understand, and he would recommend, in the strongest possible terms, that the Dominion never enter human space again. Some species were not worth conquering. Some enemies were not worth making. The humans had taught him that lesson without shedding a single drop of blood. Somewhere in the human fleet, an old man named Henry Cole sat in a medical bay while doctors checked his vital signs. His daughter had been contacted. His granddaughter knew he was safe. The music box was still waiting in the cargo hold of his captured ship, which the humans had retrieved along with him. He would make it to the birthday party after all. And across the galaxy, in meeting rooms and military headquarters and government chambers, the word spread. The story spread. A single old human had been captured, and 400 ships had come to bring him home, not because he was important, not because he knew secrets, but simply because he was one of them. Some species fought for conquest. Some fought for resources. Some fought for ideology. Humans fought for each other. And that, more than any weapon or technology or strategy, was why the galaxy would never forget them.